Hello there, everyone. Today is Wednesday. Apologies, we had a technical issue here at our streaming, but hopefully now it's working fine. And whoever it's around, you are welcome to ask a topic of your interest so we can discuss here live. Okay. Um, During the technical glitch, we were actually discussing about taxes, and I'm gonna be questions. So if you heard, and if you wanna something else discussed, just let us know the topic, and we're gonna jump right in. As usual, participants have a priority in terms of picking the topic to be discussed. But while the topics do not show up here in the chat window, I'm gonna be discussing about taxes, right? Not a super exciting subject, but that's a very important topic to foreign citizens, and therefore, I think people to have some insights in terms of taxes. Remember that for you to be able to suggest a topic or to type something in our chat window, you must have subscribed to our channel. So if you didn't subscribe yet, do it now so you are able to participate in our live stream. Another advantage of subscribing to our channel is that you're gonna be potentially alerted about whenever we have a live stream getting started. You would receive a notice potentially by email, or if you are just navigating on YouTube, you would receive a notice that a live stream is getting started. So without further ado, let's get right into the taxes. When do I need to pay taxes in Brazil? So whenever you have like a transaction in Brazil that would be taxable, you're gonna need to pay such taxes, right? And it doesn't matter if you are a foreign citizen, if you are a Brazilian, if you are traveling to Brazil, or if you are living in Brazil. If there is a taxable transaction, you need to pay taxes. So I'm gonna give you an example, right? Like maybe you never set foot in Brazil, but you're buying a property remotely through a power of attorney holder. You're not even in Brazil, but of course you're gonna need to pay the property transfer tax. After that, you have a property in Brazil. You're not even in Brazil, but because you have a property in Brazil, naturally you're gonna need to pay the annual taxes, right? So taxes, whenever there is a taxable transaction, you need to pay taxes. Now, the most asked question is like, when do I need to pay like income taxes, right? So there are income taxes. They are gonna be required. For instance, if you bought a property in Brazil, if you're doing short-term rentals, naturally you're gonna need to pay such income tax on whatever you're getting through the short-term rentals, right? And if you become a tax resident, that's when the real taxation is going to happen, in a sense that then you're going to be charged taxes across the board, including your global income. Okay, so that comes a surprise to many foreign citizens. They say, well, but I just want to stay a couple of years in Brazil. I'm not really like a citizen, right? But Brazil, just like the United States and many other countries, they understand that if you are staying in the country for most of the time in a year, it means you are benefiting from the government infrastructure, and therefore you need to pay income taxes in Brazil. Okay, and there are two main tracks for someone to become a tax resident, and I'm gonna tell you the types of tracks we're talking about. So the first one is like if you've been in Brazil, if you've been in Brazil for 184 days in a period of 12 months, it doesn't need to be like in a year, right? Like we're not talking about 2023 or 2024. We're talking about any period of 12 months, and it could be consecutive or not. What do I mean by that? Let's say some people they think that by just traveling abroad, they are going to reset the clock in terms of taxation, and that does not happen. So let's say if a person is working for an airline, okay, this person works for an airline, and because of that, this person is going to be traveling 10 times to Brazil in 2024. If during those 10 trips, or this person stays over 183 days, meaning that once the 184 days has been achieved, this person is going to be considered a tax resident in Brazil. And again, when you become a tax resident, then you are expected to pay taxes on your income in Brazil. A very practical example, like this person working for an airline, it could be like a pilot, right? So the pilot in our example, once he's been in Brazil for 184 days, he needs to declare the money that he gets paid as a pilot in the US. He needs to declare this payment, this income, to the Brazilian Revenue Service and pay taxes on his salary. The good thing about it is like some people immediately ask, well, so that means it's going to be like double taxation of my income. Is that so? And the answer is no. It's not double taxation because for some countries like the US, Brazil is going to allow you to claim a credit for taxes that you already paid abroad, okay? So, just in a very simplified manner, if it is air pilot, if he pays like a 20% tax bracket in the US, and in Brazil, he would most probably be in the 27.5% bracket, which is the maximum bracket in Brazil. He would need to pay to the Brazilian Revenue Service only 7.5%. He doesn't need to pay the entire thing, so he's actually not being double taxed, right? And this is something that does bring peace of mind to foreign citizens. All right, we have a question here from Adrian Teasdale. I was born in Brazil and left in 1971. Do I have an inheritance tax liability? Does it matter if I visit Brazil for 5 weeks or get a CPF number? So, Adrian, this would fall into the transaction in Brazil perspective, meaning that it does not matter if you live in Brazil or not, because the taxation event is the inheritance, right? So the inheritance is going to trigger the tax, the inheritance tax, and they are not taxing because you are a foreign citizen or a Brazilian. They would tax anyhow, okay? And at least from the Brazilian perspective, once the inheritance tax is paid, you don't need to pay income tax because you're getting an inheritance, right? This is not income, it's inheritance. So as long as the inheritance tax is paid, you're gonna get this money free of income tax, okay? And again, it does not matter if you are Brazilian, if you are a foreign citizen, if you are born in Brazil, but you do not live in Brazil, if you are born in Brazil, if you live in Brazil, all of those situations, they are gonna trigger the inheritance tax no matter what. Does it matter if I visit Brazil for 5 weeks? So if you're visiting Brazil for 5 weeks, this fact alone is not going to trigger tax residency, okay? Or if I get a CPF number. So the CPF number, for those who do not know, it means the Brazilian tax ID. And without a Brazilian tax ID, you cannot acquire most of the most relevant rights in terms of property. So if you don't have a Brazilian tax ID, you are unable to buy a property. If you don't have the Brazilian tax ID, you are unable to participate in a probate. So, the Brazilian tax ID is a pretty basic requirement for most of the property-related transactions and activities that you would have in Brazil. Okay, Hadrian is complementing. I mean, when I die, right? All right, does it matter? Do I have an inheritance tax? All right, when you die, if you die, abroad or in Brazil, and you have a property in Brazil, the taxation is going to be there, right? Because again, the tax is on the inheritance. The tax is not on the person. The fact that's going to trigger the tax is the passing away and the transfer of assets between the deceased person as the state, right? So meaning the passage of the assets from the state to the heirs. That's what's going to trigger. That's what's going to trigger the taxation. Okay, so we have here at the firm probates being handled as we speak, and we have probates for foreign citizens who are living in Brazil, and probates for foreign citizens who are not living in Brazil. And whenever there is an asset in Brazil, such as real estate, the Brazilian court system is going to require a probate to be open in Brazil, right? Some people, they assume, well, I have an attorney in the U.S., that's where the probate is, right? How can I get my money from Brazil? How can I get a court order from the state of Washington, the state of New York, Texas, to have the property title transferred to my name? That's not how it works. You're going to need a second probate in Brazil to handle assets such as real estate. Okay, Brazil is not going to go by the probate that's being done in another country. If it is real estate, Brazil is going to require a probate to be initiated and concluded in Brazil, right? Of course, there may be and there should be a connection between the two probates in order to respect, the heirs and whatever distribution assets should be enforced. So it's natural that some interaction between these two probates would occur. But the point is, state in Brazil, it's going to always require a probate to be done in Brazil. And going back to Adrian's question, if there is a probate in Brazil, guess what? The taxes are going to be paid in Brazil, no matter if the deceased was a foreign citizen or a Brazilian. All right, Jason Harris. Hi, Mr. Oliveira. I hope to secure my investment visa by purchasing an apartment in Maranhão. If I request your services for the transaction, would recommend a realtor, or can I find my own? Yes. When you work with us, like we have a network of qualified realtors, right? Like realtors we know that work well with foreign citizens. And then we do provide such recommendations. Maranhão is not a super popular state with foreign citizens. I need to check if we have, a real our network. But even if we don't have, usually when you identify a target property, we're going to evaluate not only the target property, but also drive the local realtors to work in a way that the transaction is going to be acceptable from the investment visa perspective. Okay, Jason. So it's pretty common for people to say, you know what, I'm going to buy the property and then I'm going to come to you for the investment visa application. And that's incorrect. That's not the right way of doing that. Because when you buy the property, I mean, there are about 10 different requirements for this transaction to qualify for the investment visa. So if you are hiring us just to do the application, it means like you buying on your own and you don't have someone supervising and advising on the purchase. and that could mean that you're going to buy something that does not qualify. It has happened like I don't know, like maybe 100 times here at the firm, probably more, that people are going to show up saying, well, I bought this property. Can you help me apply, right? And then when we take a look at the property, you see that it is a possession-only property, so there is no a real legal deed. That's one of the problems. Maybe the property is a rural property, right? For some reason, foreign citizens, they don't understand that the property should be either already built out or in the process of be constructed by a major developer. Okay, so there is never such a thing like I'm gonna buy a plot of land and I'm gonna build something on it. Like this track does not work. Okay, so in addition to the construction aspect, there is the rural property. Rural properties, they're never gonna work. So if you're buying, it could be a beautiful built house like in a rural area. This property is not going to qualify as well. Okay, so just right there, we spoke about three different factors. Let me throw a final one to your answer, Jason. If you send the money incorrectly, right, which is super common, people get really confused in terms of sending the money. If you send the money incorrectly, that could mean that the Brazilian immigration is not going to allow you to apply for the residency visa. So all in all, about 10 different requirements for a property purchase to qualify for the residency visa. So you don't ask for our help once you bought the property. You need our help from the get-go. I hope that makes sense, Jason. All right. Cap, or maybe Captain Nader Sab. Hi, Mr. Oliveira. Can I register a company with digital nomad visa? By that, I mean if I and my partner can register a company without getting a third person involved as the legal representative. All right. Because there are many people following this answer, Captain Nader, I'm going to provide some background information so they understand why you're asking that. So in Brazil, when foreign citizens, they are going to form a business entity, the Brazilian government is going to have this requirement. You must have a legal resident to represent the company. And the concept behind this requirement is that if the business is not paying the taxes, if the business is like deceiving employees, right? In Brazil, it's super common for labor lawsuits. They are part of the culture. Unfortunately, a good number of labor lawsuits are fake or, attempts to extort a business. So the Brazilian authority wants to make sure that, if you're opening a business as a foreign citizen in Brazil, maybe you're just going to take a plane and go away. And then debtors and the Brazilian tax authority and maybe employees, they are going to have no recourse because everybody knows that, cross-border litigation is extremely expensive and difficult. So for that purpose, the Brazilian authority is going to enforce a requirement that the business entity formed by such foreign citizens is going to have a local resident that they can go after if things go wrong, right? That's the whole point. The whole point is to have someone, to go after if the business entity fails, okay? And now answering Captain Nader, Sab, so the digital nomad visa, in our understanding, it does not reach the level of requirement. The level of requirement for a person to represent a Brazilian company should be at least of a permanent resident. And if you think about the underlying reason for the Brazilian authority to ask for a local resident to be responsible for the entity, is easy to understand. A digital nomad has very little commitment to the country. The same thing for a retirement visa holder. Now, if you have someone who has acquired permanent residency through real estate investment, that person would qualify, okay? If you have a person who has acquired permanent residency through marriage, yes, this person would qualify. If you have a foreign citizen who has acquired residency, permanent residency, by fathering a Brazilian child, yes, this person would qualify. But in our understanding, the digital nomad visa, the retirement visa, and many other visas, they don't reach this level of permanent residency, which is what the Brazilian government is trying to secure, right, by means of such a requirement. Now, this said, this is like, of course, the legal interpretation. Nothing precludes you from trying, okay? Because remember, when you are forming the entity, you're not going to be dealing directly with the immigration. You're going to be actually dealing with a completely separate government department. Business entities in Brazil, they are formed by authorization of state authorities. So when the state authority looks at your RNM card, which we like to joke like this is like our Brazilian green card, they are going to look at the Brazilian green card and they are going to try to make sense out of your card. Usually, they are going to look at the card, and if they see the word, permanent resident, that's when they are going to accept. But like I said, the digital nomad, usually it's going to say temporary resident, right? And that's how the state authority is going to usually interpret if you are qualified or not, okay? I hope that was helpful. Jason Harris, great advice. Thanks. You're pretty welcome, Jason. Add the ways, hi, what do you charge to do a matrícula do imóvel and register with the government, the change in property ownership? So usually we don't like, if the transaction is done, this is not something we would work with. And I can tell you why. Usually, if you bought a property and there was no updates to the property title, it means that there is something wrong with the transaction, okay? Because otherwise, it would have been done before. And to get a change in title, to fix the chain of ownership, you most probably would need collaboration from the sellers. And if your money is in the seller's pockets, chances are you're not going to have a lot of collaboration from the sellers. So this could even require like a legal procedure, most probably a lawsuit, to ask for a judge to enforce the change of ownership on the title, okay? In our experience, people, they don't understand the level of complexity that such process would require. So instead of, aggravating the prospective client, we must unfortunately say, unfortunately, we don't do that, okay? But now you know the underlying reason. If you ask for such work to be done, usually, real estate attorneys, they are going to understand that there was something wrong in the transaction, because otherwise this would have been done at the moment when you paid the price, right? Tell me if your context is different, and then we can probably elaborate on our take, okay? Captain Nader Sab, thanks for clarification. Is it wiser to invest in the property to get a permanent residency than look to set up a company? Well, it really depends on your plans, right? Like if you don't want to get a local resident to become the person in charge of your company, that could be a route, okay? Now, usually people are going to buy properties, to secure the residency, not because they want to open a company, right? If you want to open a company, there are some companies that are going to provide the local representative service. Not surprisingly, they are going to charge big bucks for that because it's a big responsibility. They want to be sure they know your books inside out, and they are going to be the ones like writing the checks on behalf of your entity, because they want to know that you're not incurring in unreasonable liability, right? Because remember, at the end of the day, the local resident is the ultimate responsible for unpaid taxes, unpaid labor benefits, unpaid labor lawsuits, right? So, but yes, I mean, technically, there is nothing wrong, Captain Nader, in terms of you securing residency first by buying a property and then being able to be the legal responsible for your own entity. Okay, so logically and technically, yes, your plan sounds just right. Okay. All right, Marisa Navas, olá, será um prazer participar. You're very welcome. Thank you for your support. Okay, going back to the topics related to taxes, what is the Carnê-Leão? All right, so Carnê-Leão is a payment coupon that foreign citizens will usually pay monthly because in Brazil, although you file tax returns once a year, there is an expectation that taxes are paid monthly. So basically, your accountant would look at your annual income and they would basically issue a payment coupon a month. And the downside is, of course, like the complexity. You need to be paying someone every single month, okay? Otherwise, they're not going to be working. They're not going to be doing your Carnê Leão, the payment coupon. The upside is that you don't actually have to pay everything in a single shot. So usually a much higher number, right? So by paying in monthly statements, a monthly installments, you are potentially, being able to better digest the tax bill. All right, Edelweiss. Yes, I meant before or at the same time of purchasing a property. Are sellers generally willing to have the title ownership changed before receiving money? Okay, thank you for clarifying. And the answer is no. Like, I mean, it's extremely rare for seller to accept transferring the title ownership before receiving the money for obvious reasons, right? Just like as you are concerned that you're going to be paying something and not getting the title, they are also concerned that they are transferring the title without getting the money paid. And what we do, like we are able to do in some states, okay, not in every state, but I'm going to give you two examples. Bahia, right? There is a lot of foreign citizen activity in Salvador, Bahia. In Rio de Janeiro, we are also able to do that. We have an arrangement with the local registry, and it works like this. And of course, the seller needs to agree as well. But the arrangement is the following, right? The seller is going to sign the transfer deed, but the registry is not going to release the new title until the seller tells the registry that he was paid. Okay, so that's a kind of made up escrow, right? It's not an actual escrow account. It's more like a guarantor. The registry is going to behave as a guarantor because the registry is going to say, seller, sign the transfer deed or the deed of sale, right? The seller is going to sign the deed of sale. And then the registry is going to tell to the buyer, listen, buyer, I'm not going to give you this until the seller tells me that the seller was paid, okay? So that's something we do in some states. The second thing, which is actually much more common, we do what we call an emulated escrow account, or we emulate an escrow account. We work with a currency exchange bank. You send the money to the seller, but we working with the bank, which is a partner of ours, we tell the bank, listen, you're not going to release the money until the day of the closing, okay? So again, it's not a real escrow because particularly in the United States, you have like escrow accounts in which the title company, they are going to hold the money. And once the title was transferred, then they are going to release the payment to the seller. There is no such a thing in Brazil. There are a couple of startups, but they are super tiny. They have zero relevance in the national market. So Brazil, for all effects, has no escrow account. So yes, that's very concerning, right? Like to have your money in someone else's pocket and just expect this person to do the right thing, particularly if you come from a country like the US, in which there is escrow accounts. But the two workarounds we have, first, we emulate an escrow account. The second one, we work with the registry for the registry to work as a guarantor and bring some level of comfort to both parties. Captain Nader, thank you. You're very welcome. All right. Getting another taxation question. In your experience, is the tax burden heavy on foreign citizens? Uh, well, like I said before, I think the tax burden on the foreign citizens is pretty reasonable. I think that by applying credits to whatever you are paying abroad, this is not going to result in double taxation. So I think it's reasonable, right? Going back to the example, you're getting 100,000 US dollars a year, right? Just for getting an easy number to work with. Your income in the US is 100,000 US dollars. You're paying 20%, so you're paying $20,000 a year. In Brazil, your bracket would be 27 and a half. The $20,000 you paid is going to apply credit. Brazil would charge you $27,500. The difference between the two numbers is 7,500 US dollars. For this very simplistic example, your tax burden would be 7,500 US dollars. I think that's reasonable. Okay, if you live in Brazil, there is no workaround. You can just say, "Well, I'm here in Brazil, but I just want to enjoy the good things. I don't want to don't want to have anything to do with taxes." That's not how life works. I think it's reasonable for the Brazilian government to ask you if you are residing in Brazil to pay taxes in Brazil. I hope it makes sense. Otherwise, thank you. That sounds great. I would feel much more comfortable with something similar to an escrow. I'm probably going to buy in São Paulo. What is the word for the government property registry? Right. So we have two words, okay, that are going to be very meaningful to the Brazilian parties. The first step, like when you have the closing, the word is escritura, right? So I'm going to write here in the chat similar to escritura. Okay, that's the first step. I mean, of course, not the first step, right? First, you need your contract. There is a bunch of due diligence. There is an actually long period of time between signing the purchase agreement and the escritura. But just simplifying, closing, kind of similar to escritura. And then there is a second moment in time, which is going to be the recording of the title of the deed of sale and issuance of a new title, right? I'm trying to, make the best I can in terms of bringing the two concepts together, but we're talking about two different legal systems, so there is not exactly 100% match, okay? But recording of the deed of sale and issuance of a new title, we call it registro do imóvel. Not perfectly translatable. So, okay. Just a heads up, so later on you don't say I said it's the very same thing. Okay, so now you get the terms you can use, like to discuss with eventually a Brazilian party. Jason Harris, Mr. Oliveira, I do plan to start looking for an apartment in Maranhão during the month of April. How soon do I need to make an appointment with you before I travel to start looking? Jason, I would recommend maybe like a month before, right? Uh, it really depends on how serious you are. Like if you are putting money aside, it may make sense that you have an appointment now, right? Because then you decide if this thing is really for you. When we have our consultation, people sometimes they get surprised, like we're not trying to sell opportunity of buying a property in Brazil, and that's the good part of paying for a consultation, right? Like if you get a consultation with a lawyer in Brazil, there are two things wrong. The first thing wrong is that this is prohibited by the Brazilian Bar Association. So basically, you are dealing with a lawyer who, right off the bat, is not being ethical with you, right? That's the first problem you have with a free consultation. The problem is this lawyer, he's not going to make money with you unless you proceed with the transaction. And it is super common in our consultations for us easily see that the person is a bad fit for buying a property in Brazil. Okay, so when you have a consultation, and particularly a paid consultation, you're gonna have like a honest opinion on whether buying a property in Brazil is for you or not. Okay, was just yesterday I had a consultation with a gentleman. He was asking about, like the retirement visa is not, buying property. But just for the retirement visa, at the end of the consultation, it was clear to me and even more clear to him that, the idea wasn't a good idea at all, okay? Because he was renting, like he was a retired gentleman, he was renting a property, and he had this idea that he would be able to ship all his stuff to Brazil. But when he learned about the complexity and costs of shipping his stuff to Brazil, he realized it wasn't a good idea, and he didn't want to part ways with all this, stuff that he has. Second problem, which was another surprise, like he said, well, I was planning to buy a property on a credit basis, in other words, to get a mortgage. But I told him, listen, your credit history is going to start from zero, right? And there was, I think, like the final issue with his plan. He said that, I'm 6, 7 years old. I'm not going to start my credit history from zero. The tax residency was another concern. So at the end of the consultation, this person was first clear that he wasn't a good match for retiring in Brazil. That was the first thing. And the second thing, he was very glad that he learned about that before pulling the trigger, right? Because imagine, like, you do all of those things, and then a couple of years down the road, and probably after spending, I don't know, like 100,000 US dollars just like in moving, applying for the visa, getting a place, and all the small changes that together amount to a huge change would include. So he was extremely happy with the consultation, even though the consultation meant that Brazil was a no-go for him, okay? I hope that makes sense, Jason. So maybe a consultation now to make sure that you are a good fit, that Brazil is a good fit for you, and maybe another one prior to your shopping efforts in Brazil. I think that would be a good plan. Okay, Willie Owens is foreign retirement income taxes, pension, social security, all of them. Okay, I know there is a bunch. I know there is a bunch of exemptions abroad, but Brazil thinks that your retirement income abroad is taxable. Okay, so pension, social security, 401k, Roth IRA, standard IRA, annuities, you name it. Okay, Brazil wants to tax it, and that's the cost of living in another country. That's the cost of living in Brazil. You're going to contribute with some level of taxes. All right. Whenever taxation is an important aspect to you, that could justify a consultation just for this topic. Okay, like consultation, it does encompass like so many different things that I think that taxation alone would justify, a consultation for you to know potentially what would be your tax burdens in Brazil. Eden Youssef, hi Oliveira. First of all, thank you very much for these live streams. Thank you, Eden, for participating. It's the idea here is to have a community of people interested in these topics of foreign citizens in Brazil. Can you comment on citizenship by investment in research activities where the investment is 150,000? All right, Adam. Yeah. So um, there are two tracks, right? Like in terms of investment in Brazil, for you to acquire residency, there is the real estate investment track, which is usually the one that we speak most of the time. And there is a second track, which is by investment in a business, right? So the investment in a business, a traditional amount is going to be 500,000 reais, which is roughly 100,000 US dollars. But just like Adam is bringing over here in his question, like when you have a relevant research work being done by the business, this 500,000 is going to be reduced dramatically to 150,000. Okay. Now, Adam, traditionally here at the firm, we avoid working or even advising on the business investment route just because we think that Brazil is too complex when it comes to taxation and when it comes to like labor law to foreign citizens. Okay. I like to give an example, as an example, Walmart. Like Walmart came to Brazil, they spent billions and billions and billions of dollars, were never able to make money in Brazil. And at the end of this ordeal, they left Brazil with the certainty that they would never come back to Brazil. And the main reason for that, and if you just Google, like you could Google on your own, Google why Walmart has left Brazil, you're gonna see that one of the main reasons, like some people they say it was one of the reasons, but in my understanding, maybe it was the main reason. It was like the number of fake labor lawsuits that were targeting Walmart. Okay, like fake labor lawsuits. It's part of the Brazilian culture. Okay, there were some changes in the Brazilian civil code a few years ago to reduce this reality, so it was more rampant like in the past, but is still around. Okay, and the reality is like we cannot like think about us getting a foreign citizen into a Brazilian business and for this business to fail miserably like a couple of years down the road. And basically, this person would tell us, listen, you never told me that this was this, right? So we don't touch investment in companies. The research route is actually a company investment. Now, listen, this is like a general take, right? Like there are exceptions. There are foreign citizens who have like also a more tough, cultural background. Like if you come from, country that's not like the US, if you're coming from Africa, if you're coming like from the Middle East, if you're coming from Eastern Europe, right? Like you are probably coming from countries which are closer to Brazil in terms of a challenge for a business to succeed. So in this case, chances would be, I would say, better. But we don't get involved in such routes just because we think it's most of the time it's going to be a pretty bad idea for a foreign citizen to rely on such routes to secure residency, right? You need to keep like a number of employees. You need to keep a bunch of indicators. You need to meet a bunch of requirements, right? All of that while you are trying to run a business. Not a good idea, Adam, all right? That's our take. Bob, hi Oliveira. I will be reaching out to your team soon. How would taxes work for American citizens that want to get permanent residency? Is there a tax loophole, or I have to pay taxes to both countries? Bob, easy answer. You're gonna pay taxes to both countries. There are no tax loopholes, okay? No tax loopholes, and actually, the two countries, they've been working together specifically to exchange information. So if you are a foreign citizen, come to Brazil. Once you apply for the permanent residency, they know all about you. They are going to exchange information with the U.S. government for the purpose of taxing you. Okay, so no workaround. The only upside, or a pretty reasonable upside, is that you usually get a credit for the for the dollars that you paid for taxes in the U.S. I'm not sure if you heard my example. $100,000 in income in the U.S. You are in a 20% tax bracket in the U.S. You're paying $20,000 in taxes a year. In Brazil, the bracket would be 27.5. Difference is 7.5%. And in theory, in a very simplistic explanation, you would be paying in Brazil $7,500 per year. Okay, and just going back to my take on it, I think it is fair if you live in Brazil, right? Like, I mean, you need to assist with the government. That's how the game is. That's just like in the U.S., right? In the U.S., it doesn't matter if you live in Europe, if you live in Africa, if you live in Australia, in Japan, they don't care. The U.S. is going to tax you no matter where you are. So Brazil, listen, you're living over here, you're benefiting from everything that Brazil has to offer. We want you to pay some level of tax. I think it's fair. Willie Owens, even if it's already taxed in your home country. Exactly. That's the example I just gave it to Bob. Potentially, you get credits for the taxes that you pay at home, but you pay on your global income. Okay, so your income is in your home country. Brazil is going to look at that income and they are going to tax it in Brazil. Eden Youssef, thank you very much. That is very helpful. All right, so traditionally we would have already ended our live stream, but today we had some technical issues at the beginning. That's why we stayed until later in the day. I want to thank you for your participation. It's really a pleasure to interact with expats and foreign citizens who love Brazil. Our next live stream this time is gonna be on January the 21st. We're gonna skip on our live streams of January the 14th. We're gonna skip on our live stream on Wednesday the 17th, but we're gonna be back on the 21st, and I hope to see you guys. If you wanna be reminded of the next live stream, you can go to our channel, and then you can see a tab for our lives. And over there, you're gonna see that the live stream for the 21st, it's already scheduled. And there is a button over there that you click, like remind me, okay? So if you do that, once we are back on the 21st, I hope to see you here. Thank you very much. That's very helpful, Adam. All right, so to all of you, have a blessed rest of your day, and I hope to see you on January the 21st. You take care.